Hello, everyone. Welcome to the live stream or the replay, depending on when you are watching this. I don't have my headphones in yet, so I have no idea if you're hearing me or not. I see things moving on the screen, so I'm assuming that you are. If you are watching this on the replay, we'll be starting in about 10 minutes. You can fast forward if you'd like, or you can hang out for the pre-show. Or if you're here live, then you're stuck with me. That's how it usually goes, though. All right, let's get this headset on. And I can hear myself instead of yelling into the room, not knowing how I sound. Oh, that's much better. I sound much better in headphones rather than me yelling. Don't you think? There's too many cables. All right. We have that cable set up, all ready to go. Get our shirts aligned. Get everything ready here. This is a thing. Let's see. Did I get Socrative going yet? I don't think I did. I need to change the website so that we're live. I need to do my podcast intro. This needs to come back a little bit. Then we'll look at cameras and see if the cameras are working. We want to launch a quiz. We want to choose the A+ for today. Next. Oh, wait, previous. Can I choose my delivery method? No, that's next. I want to do teacher paste, no names required, and start. Okay. Okay, that's going. That's ready. Let's grab, I want to grab a couple of things there. Are we recording? We are recording. Let's change the website, shall we? Hello, chat room. Welcome. Been in there for a while. Had it up and running a couple hours before today, just so I wouldn't forget. It's the little things. All right, let's change our settings for the bar at the top of the website. And now it says my A+ study group is right now. Click here to join us, and it's /live. If you are watching on YouTube, it is /live. It's professormesser.com/live. And there is a real-time chat right there that I am watching. Hello, chat room. There's rabbits and all sorts of people in the chat room. No, really. At least that's what it says. Let's do the intro for the podcast, shall we? I haven't cleared things out there in the throat yet. Let's... Here we go. We'll do this podcast intro, and then we've got a few minutes before we get started, about 7 minutes. How bad is that going? All right, everybody. Let's do a podcast intro. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer A+ Study Group. This study group was recorded on March 7th, 2018. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. Not bad. Let's do another one. I'm James Messer, and you're listening to the Professor Messer A+ Study Group After Show. This after show was recorded on March 7th, 2018. If you'd like to watch a video replay, visit my website at professormesser.com. All right, let's get chat rooms up and ready to go. It's a little more challenging today than usual. Let's see if we can do this. There we go. And get this one down here. Oh, boy. It's not going. CEUs are available from both the live and replays. I'm a little behind on my CEUs right now. And you'll get information during the live stream on how to earn those CEUs. And if you are watching this in a replay, yeah, you can use any of the replays for CEUs. Unfortunately, CompTIA limits how many of these you're able to do. You can't listen to 50 of these and then get enough CEUs for your Security Plus. That part doesn't happen. But you can get some. You can get a few. All right, we've got that, we got this, we got that, we got the other thing. Let's see, is this going to be in the right place? Can we move it? I don't want to be too far over, else I'm looking hi, here's the side of my face. Maybe we can move it there. That's only slightly less annoying if you're watching. Let's do a check on the cameras. Hi, everybody. Hi, how am I there? I'm relatively centered. Let's, the bird cam. That's what's going on here. There is camera. Let's put something on these cameras. Camera. Don't really have anything on that camera. We need to move things off the page. We need to get rid of our Discord so it doesn't bother us. Let's get rid of our Slack. All of these things. Oh, Matt passed his 901 first try. Congratulations. 902 on Friday. I hope that's not a back-to-back thing. You're studying like a month. What can we do here? Can I just bring up a graphic for camera check? Sure. What were we doing? Camera 3 and camera 4. Nice. Nice. Okay. The cameras work. What else do I need to have on my screen? I need to have a course notes so you can actually see those. Let's do the 901, 902. Ba-ba. Da-da-da-da-da-da. And we'll do the combined course notes. And we'll get rid of my thumbnails. And we'll do 2-page because that looks nice. It's not 2-page. That is. There we go. And what else do we need to do? I might want to bring up the GTS Learning stuff so you can see that later on. And the nice people, GTS Learning. There we go. We'll log into that. We got questions. Well, look at this. This is all working, we think. I'm assuming it is. We've got 3 minutes or so before we get started. My alarm's gone off, so let's see if the Twitter already closed out Twitter. So we'll never know. It's a mystery whether the tweet went out. I'm assuming it did. We're going to look at Twitter. I could look here. I could look right here on my Twitter. Let's have a look. And we need to look on my home and see if we can even find what's going on. Yeah, there we go. It's working fine. It's working great. All right. Are we ready? I think. What's the link to the live event? You're in the chat and you're asking what the link is. You're there. If you're in, well, that's not true because you could be on a different page. It's professormesser.com/live. Or you can use the link at the top of the website. Or I could maybe put it into the chat. That'd be crazy, wouldn't it? Group /live. And we might as well put it into the other chat as well. All right. All righty. Let's see what else I got going on here. Is everything there on the screen I need? Did I forget something? I'm sure I did. But that's okay. We will figure it out as we go along. How far can I stretch that? Not much farther. There's only so much room on this desk. I need a desk that's larger. That's what we need, right? Larger desks. Let's see, temperature-wise in here, what we're going to work with. We're going to work with that right there. And what else? What else? I think we're good. I think we're so good. I think we just need to make this happen. This is not really a new MacBook. I have had it for, I don't know, 5 or 6 months since the end of last year. It's not really that new. But it's nice. It's a new iMac that's in front of me. Although to you it looks exactly the same. But the screen that is in front of me right now is new. It's the new iMac Pro. Because we're doing some rendering. Yeah, I wish it was the $5,000 iMac. This one is this one's a little more beefy than that one happens to be. Oh, look, it's 12 noon. We could do something. We can talk about IMAX later. Let's do a study group, everybody. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the March 2018 Professor Messer A+ Study Group. My name is James Messer. I'll be your host here in our headquarters in Tallahassee, Florida. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. If you're here on the live stream, you can always check in on professormesser.com/live. There is a live chat there. This is the study group that we do every month where I will ask you questions. You will interactively live on the internet using technology answer them, and we'll all find out together how we did. I'll tell you in just a minute how we go through all of that. There is quite a bit to go through today. I've got plenty of questions available for you. There is also a lot to talk about with in the after show. We're going to do an hour of Q&A, and then we'll do an hour where I'll just open up the phone lines. And you can call in and ask whatever you'd like. It doesn't even have to have anything to do with A+ or technology in general. It's up to you. This is a study group that I bring to you. Thank you for your support, by the way. I would not be able to do these study groups without you. Well, if you are watching this live, if you go to professormesser.com/live, there'll be a link there on how to join in with the Q&A. And for the second hour, the phone number is there as well. That becomes useful. You can always subscribe to our channel. What are they saying these days? Smash the button? You should smash the button. I have no idea what that means. Smash that button. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube. Follow us on the tweet, on the Twitter, on the Twitter thing, professormesser.com/Twitter. I understand it has some interesting information on it, and you'll get a daily pop quiz for A+. So that's a good reason right there to join me on Twitter. And of course, don't pay full price for your vouchers. You should, of course, go to professormesser.com/vouchers and get a discount. That can come in handy as well. We've got so much more to talk about. Some of you were asking in the pre-show, though, about continuing education units. So you can, of course, earn CEUs just by watching this live or watching this on a replay. So that can be useful as well. You absolutely should go through and find out what CEUs you need. These are webinar type CEUs. So if you're getting these CEUs for your Security Plus, for instance, you can earn 10 of these in a 3-year period. Sometime in this first hour, I'll tell you exactly how you can earn a CEU, and I'll send you all of that information. There is plenty going on right now with the A+. We are in our 3rd year of A+ for the 229.01.902. It was released on December the 15th of 2015. I guess our 2nd year. We're into the final 3rd year of this. You'll probably be a new A+ somewhere at the end of this year, I would imagine. But since we're now recording in March, you've got plenty of time. Do not wait for a new version of an exam. Because, by the way, it's exactly the same certification, regardless of which version you happen to get. If you are already A+ certified, there's no reason to take this latest version of the exam. There are a lot of different ways that you can renew. Some of them don't require any examination at all. CompTIA does provide a renewal certification. If you really like taking the certification exams, it's completely up to you. To get your A+, though, you need 2 different certification exams to pass. And then you will absolutely be able to do that. So make sure that you go through the process of trying to figure out what are the topics I need to know. CompTIA does provide you with some exam objectives. Make sure you download those so you can see on the 901 hardware, networking, mobile devices, and hardware and network troubleshooting. And then for the 902, you've got Windows, other operating systems, including Linux and Mac OS, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures. So there's plenty that you need to be able to work through to be able to do that. There is that's one of the things that you, of course, need to have first thing are those exam objectives. Make sure you get those from the CompTIA website. A lot of people don't realize they're there. It tells you everything you need to know. We'll talk more about that later, too. Of course, I have Q&A available. I always mention you need to get good videos, get a good book, do some Q&A, get some hands-on. I've created some Q&A for the A+ exam. It's my pop quiz collection PDFs. I have one for the 229.01 and one for the 229.02. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. Combined, it's 1,300 questions, both performance-based questions, multiple choice questions, test tips are in there, and it's a PDF. You can download it and use it immediately. You can find out more about that, professormesser.com/PQC for Pop Quiz Collection. I also have some free online right now. The one that's online is professormesser.com/popquiz. Something you can use right away. And what I've done is archive the questions that we usually do during the study group, so you can help renew the things you may have already gone over, or perhaps questions you have not heard yet. They go back quite a ways. A lot of you want audio replays of this as well. If you would like to get a podcast version of this, you can go to professormesser.com/podcasts. And of course, that will give you access to my A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study groups. They're separate RSS feeds for either one of those. And you're welcome to subscribe, turn on your podcast catcher. I usually get those podcasts in sometime later in the same day, so it can just automatically show up on your listening device, and you can listen to the podcast. It won't help you very much for the visual questions, but for everything else, maybe that might be useful too. And I have both the study group itself and the after show on the same podcast. We are doing Q&A today. So if you want to participate live with this Q&A, go to professormesser.com/QA. It's the only page you need to go to. Pop open a new browser window and go directly to that, and you can stay right there and answer the questions. You don't have to change to different windows or wait for something else. The next question will pop up on the screen as we go. There's also an app called the Socrative Student app that you can get on your favorite software app store for your mobile device. And maybe that would be one you can look through as well. It will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, PROFESSORMESSER. All of this information also available at professormesser.com/live, so you can see exactly how those things are spelled and what the URLs happen to be. If you've made it there, there's a question waiting for you. Here's the question. You've been asked to look at a new computer that's having problems, but you're not sure what storage devices, volumes, or drive letters have been configured. What command line would allow you to view this information? This is a question from last week. So this is one we're going to test ourselves and not only see if our Q&A front end on Socrative is working properly. You should see this question there already, but maybe you'll have to remember what the answer is. So it's a little bit of a double jeopardy for you. You'll have to figure out all of those different things. Did I make it? Can I see the question? Oh, now I have to answer it. And if you were here last week, you really should get this one right. This is a fill-in-the-blank question, too, which makes it even more difficult. Normally on the Socrative, we'll do some fill-in-the-blanks, we'll do some performance-based, we'll do some multiple choice. But this particular one is a fill-in-the-blank. A lot of you remember this one. I obviously can't show a summary of this because it's such an open-ended question. A lot of you are just completely honest. I have no idea. That's the answer coming through for some of you. Most of you, though, getting this right. Getting this absolutely correct. If you're able to see this, and it looks like a number of you are able to see this, then you know that the correct answer is DISKPART. This allows you to manage disk configurations, all from the command line. So if you can't boot a machine, you're at the command line, you've gotten into the troubleshooting prompt, and now you want to be able to see, how's the system configured? What partitions does it have? What are the partitions named? What drive letter is assigned to these partitions? You'll be able to see all of that using the DISKPART command, and there's a lot of summary options in there. You can do a lot of damage, by the way, with the DISKPART command, so make sure you know what you're doing. But I show one example of something can't hurt anything. List volume is a command inside of DISKPART that allows you to see those volumes. So that can be very useful if you're sitting down to a machine trying to troubleshoot. You have no idea how this machine is configured. So one can really help you out quite a bit. So hopefully now you see the process. You've seen the questions pop up. You are able to participate. Let's get into the study group and do some questions. One of the things you may have noticed on our live streams is the first question I'd like to give you is a performance-based question. This is very similar to the actual exam, by the way. When you sit down to take the A+ exam, you'll get a number of questions at the very beginning of the exam that are anything but multiple choice. They might be fill in the blank. You might be put at a command prompt and told to perform a function. There might be matching. You might have to put things in a particular order. There's no telling what you may be faced with, but it's anything but a multiple choice question. CompTIA calls these performance-based questions. So I have what is to be a performance-based question for you. This is a bit of another fill in the blank, if you will, but it does give you an idea of the things you should look for or know about for the exam. And here is the question. This one got a little scrunch there, but I think we can make it out. Match the utility to the description. Match the utility to the description. And I have 6 utilities here. For those of you listening on the podcast, the 6 utilities are VI, LS, Format, Expand, SFC, and Check Disk. So those are your 6 utilities: VI, LS, Format, Expand, SFC, and Check Disk. Now, the things that are listed there as the descriptions are: A, extract a device driver's sys file; B, initialize the NTFS file system on a USB connected drive; C is change the IP address information inside of a text file; D is check the integrity of all operating system files; E is identify any logical file system problems; and F is count the number of files contained in a directory. All right, that is 6 different utilities. They all match to one of these. So there's a one-to-one relationship. I haven't thrown anything weird in there. There is a one-to-one. So in your answers that you're putting down, if you think they're all lined up perfectly, if you think it's 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, and 6F, you can simply put that in at the prompt on your Socrative, or put them in whatever you'd like. Maybe you think they're in reverse. Maybe you think it's 1F, 2E, 3D, 4C, 5B, 6A. Whichever way it is, put those answers into Socrative. I can see it there. We are slow getting our answers in. So a lot of you are really going through this and trying to figure out what it is. And perhaps it's the process of elimination. Maybe there's some things you know, so you can take them out of the equation, and then maybe it's down to 2 or 3 that perhaps you don't know. Maybe that's one way to look at doing it. But a lot of you are getting those answers in now. I think a lot of you know these. I'm looking through the answers. A lot of you doing pretty good with this. There are a couple of you maybe switched 1 or 2 for those and getting it there. Remember, don't answer in the chat room. You want to answer online at professormesser.com/QA. And if you're watching this on a replay, unfortunately, Socrative is not available for you on the replay. It's something you can only participate in live if you're here during the live event. And if you'd like to know when the live event is, you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar, or just on any page in the right sidebar, I have a little calendar in there as well. You can see when all the upcoming events are. You might be watching this replay months from now and you're wondering, when's the next one of these things? Well, you can go to the calendar and find out exactly when that is. We're getting a lot of answers now. Some of you are typing a lot. You don't have to type everything in. You can just do 1A, 2B, 3C, 4D, 5E, et cetera, et cetera. And since it's hard to grade these, I'm sort of watching them as I go in and go, yep, that's right. That one might not be right. That one's sort of right. Although those of you that did manage to type it in, much easier for me to read through it. Quite honestly, you've done me a favor. Thank you for doing that. So hopefully those of you listening on the podcast can think about using VI and LS and Format and Expand and SFC and Check Disk. Maybe one of these makes sense for what you're doing. Now, let's see how many answers we've gotten in. We're doing pretty well. You folks you've been Googling very, very, very much on this one to try to figure out the details. There's no Google for this one. This is pretty common, by the way, for CompTIA, where they aren't interested in you explaining what an acronym means. They want you to know how to actually use it. And this is a good example of that. You have to know VI. What does VI stand for? Okay, how do I use that? That's a very good example of what you may be faced with on the exam. Let's step through these and see if we happen to know what these happen to be. No idea why my header there came down a little bit, but let's step through all of these 1 through 6. So let's start with VI. VI is a visual editor. It is one that allows you to edit text files on a system, primarily on a Linux or a Mac OS system. So your VI allows you to change the IP address inside of a text file. You're editing a text file and being able to work with that. So that might be one that makes sense. If you ever need to edit a text file, VI is a perfect example if you're in Linux or at the command line at Mac OS. The second option here was LS. LS, another Linux command, another difficult one to figure out, too, if you've never used it. That's an odd ls. Really just lists the files available in a directory. So F, count the number of files contained in a directory. So far it's 1C, 2F. We've got another one available. 3 was format. What format can do? That may be self-explanatory. Format allows us to initialize the NTFS file system on a USB-connected drive, among other things. But that is the option available to us. So number 3 matched to letter B, initialize that NTFS file system. Number 4 was expand. Expand is associated with A, extract a device driver's sys file. The expand command, of course, allows you to uncompress and pull files out of a Windows cabinet file or a CAB file. And usually these CAB files will store operating system files, device drivers, installations for programs. And sometimes you just want this one file that is stuck in the cabinet file, and it's the expand command that allows you to get that. Number 5 was SFC. SFC is the system file checker. So we know that that would correlate to D, check the integrity of all operating system files. And then number 6, check disk, which I probably should have said CHKDSK. Check disk sort of gave some of this away because it pointed you to E, identify any logical file system problems. Now, check disk can also help you identify any physical problems on the drive as well, but that wasn't one of your options. The one I gave you was identify logical file system problems, which check disk certainly does. It does quite well too. So hopefully you were able to match these together. You might get a matching problem yourself on your exam right at the beginning for these performance-based questions. So in summary, it's 1C, 2F, 3B, 4A, 5D, 6E, and those are all the answers for those utilities. Hopefully that's now stuck in your head a little bit more too. Yeah, I use Vim. Other folks in the chat room, Mark's saying, I use Nano. I don't use VI. Now we get into that argument. Now we can all argue about which editor we use, which is certainly a good use of our time. Maybe we should continue on. I've got another question for you. Let's go to the next question, if I can get to it on my screen. The question is, a drive in your RAID 5 array has failed. That doesn't sound good. Which of these would be the best next step? And I have, in this particular case, multiple choice, thankfully, that we can look at. Your possible options are A, replace the drive and restore from a known good backup. B, replace the drive and resync the array. C, replace the bad drive and all other drives associated with that array controller and restore from backup. D is perform a backup, replace the drive, and restore from the backup. And E is no additional action is required. So one of these, hopefully, or as they say in the chat room, update your resume. Maybe that would be, we don't have to update our resume, thankfully. I don't think. If we know the right answer, you may be able to keep this job just a little bit longer. If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. Please don't put the answer or any hints into the chat room. You want to instead try to figure out what that answer might be. And there is an answer here that's pretty obvious. You should know this one. The exams could ask you about many different RAID types, and not just what the RAID types are, but how you can recover from using certain RAID types as well. So that's something you should look at as well. I am running RAID as well. I have a RAID array that I store all of my drives on. It's from Synology. It's a it's 12 drive array, and Synology uses a type of RAID 5. It's not exactly RAID 5, but it's kind of RAID 5-ish. And that's what I run on mine. And you do need to know what happens when you have a problem. A lot of you finding the answer on this one. I'm seeing the answers come in as you're typing that. Maybe a lot of you are finding that Google link. Let's see how we did with this one. Here are possible answers. We can A, replace the drive and restore from a known good backup. 13% chose that. Only 4% chose E, no additional action. Good for you. Definitely there's some action you need to take. 6% of you said replace the bad drive and all other drives associated with that array controller and restore from backup. 13% said perform a backup, replace the drive, and restore from the backup. But the vast majority of you, or I would say the majority, perhaps not the vast majority, but 66% of you said replace the drive and resync the array. That sounds kind of easy, actually. That's not too hard at all. I literally had this particular problem last week. It was actually self-inflicted. The way that you upgrade to a larger drive in the array on the Synology is you pull a drive out. So you effectively simulate a drive failing, and then you replace it with a bigger drive. You slide in the new drive, and it recognizes, oh, there's a new drive. Let me restore to that particular drive. Let me resynchronize, and I'll be able to now use the larger array space, which is exactly what happened. So if you did choose B, replace the drive and resync the array, that was absolutely the right answer. Well done. Each version of RAID has a different set of steps you're going to have to go through if there's a problem. So you need to check and understand exactly what is expected at each version. If this was RAID 0, and RAID 0 also means there's zero redundancy. If you lost a drive in RAID 0, you couldn't simply replace the drive and resync, which was what we were able to do with RAID 5. With RAID 0, you're down. You've lost the data. You've effectively lost half of your data, which effectively is all of your data. You can't do anything with half of it. You need all of it. So the challenge you have with RAID 0 is you want to be sure that you have a backup somewhere, because then you can replace the drive that went bad, but you're going to have to restore everything from backup with RAID 0. RAID 0 requires 2 or more drives. RAID 1, 2 or more drives as well, but at least that's mirrored. So if you run into a scenario with RAID 1, if you lose a drive, you're still running. But if you lose that drive, now you are in trouble. RAID 5 is what we were talking about. You need 3 or more drives for RAID 5. And all the drives need to be operational except for one. If you lose one, everything still continues to work, but you need to replace that drive. If you lose 2, somebody in the chat room even said, yeah, but what if you lose a second one? Oh, that happens sometimes. that does bite people sometimes. There are certain RAID array controllers that you can purchase, or RAID arrays that you can purchase, that do have the ability to have multiple drives have parity. So if you lose 2 drives, you're still okay. This is one of the problems. And in fact, it's true as well that some arrays also provide a hot spare capability. So as soon as the drive fails, it automatically starts rebuilding. But this process for rebuilding takes some time. This is when, if you have a big power outage and everything goes kerclunk, you could lose a couple of drives. So it's sometimes useful to run one of the more advanced array types that would give you multiple redundant disks, which could save you in those particular scenarios. If you are using RAID arrays, make sure you check on that. But that is the right answer. If you chose B, replace the drive and resync the array, that's 66% of you got absolutely right. Well done with that one. Let's do another question. A lot of you have said, I want more than definition questions. So I've created some questions here that are a little bit long to talk about. A lot here in the question, but hopefully it'll help you think about things you might run into on the exam. Here's your new question. Here we go. The question is, you've just downloaded and installed a new calendar program, but when you run the program, the screen goes blank and your computer turns off. When you turn your computer back on again, you see the message, no boot device available. What has most likely just happened? Well, I gave you some options though. You don't have to think about what might have happened. I have at least 5 things that this could possibly be. It might be A, that your system is infected with ransomware. It might be B, that a rootkit is installed. It might be C, that a botnet is using your computer. It might be D, that you executed a Trojan horse, or it might be E, that your system has been phished. One of those might be the right answer. Maybe you know what the right answer is. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you will, of course, be able to answer live. We'll get to see what everybody's answer happens to be for these. You've just downloaded and installed a new calendar program. When you run the program, the screen goes blank. Your computer turns off. When you turn your computer back on again, you see the message, no boot device available. What has most likely just happened? That is something you do not want to have happen, by the way. All of these are bad. You have to figure out which one of these is the one that this one probably is. Which one did I stumble into this time? Maybe you happen to know the answer. Hopefully some of you have also been able to work through this as well. This is one whenever I work through trying to figure out and troubleshoot, you almost have to get rid of what it couldn't possibly be so that you can focus down the options of what it could possibly be. So maybe that's something you should do. It's very interesting that that whenever you run into these types of problems, people do think about, should I have been using some type of software that might have protected against something like this? Yeah, you probably should have. That might have worked pretty well for you. And as someone who is a former systems engineer for a very large antivirus company, one you absolutely have heard of, things like this happen all the time. And unfortunately, people do have problems with that. Yeah, I go back to the Network Associates days, which was a combination of McAfee and Network General. So I go back to the McAfee days with being systems engineer. I focus primarily on the networking side, but we had to do everything. At that time, I was doing firewalls, antivirus, network analysis, and troubleshooting, help desk software. What happened? Why were we doing that? Let's see how we did with this answer, though. Let's not ponder what we've done with our career and why we got there. Let's see how we did with this one. Kind of torn on this one. 49% of you, almost half of you, said you executed a Trojan horse. 33% of you said a rootkit is installed. 9% said your system is infected with ransomware, and then a tie for fourth with 5%, a botnet's using your computer and your system has been phished. Well, as you can tell by the answers I gave you here, I was trying to have you look at what these particular issues were: ransomware, rootkit, botnet, Trojan horse, phishing. Those are the 5 things I was hoping you knew about, and hopefully you would understand how to recognize all 5 of those things, because one of these clearly fits into one of those answers, and the other 4 answers it couldn't possibly be. So let's see which one we think it is. That's whenever we start going through these questions and trying to figure out which one do we think it is. This is how we can absolutely go through and figure out maybe which one it isn't. Now, the one that you probably should have landed on, though, is the Trojan horse. This is the one we do want to know about, the Trojan horse. This is based on the story of the Trojan horse, where the Greeks captured Troy from the Trojans by hiding in a horse that was brought inside the gates. They tricked people into bringing something that looked completely innocuous inside of the safe area. And of course, it was not innocuous at all. It was something kind of bad, being able to work through that. So whenever you run into this with software, it can be pretty fatal. The software pretends to be one thing, but in reality, it's something that's pretty bad. And we see this all the time with different types of software. Its goal is to make you click on it. A lot of software that's a virus, malware, some type of operating system vulnerability has to find a way into your system to work around you. But what if the software just used you? You're the vulnerability. You are the problem. So you clicked on it, and now suddenly you've launched the software. You've given it full rights that you have to be able to run on your system. It will usually circumvent your existing security. If you have access to disable your antivirus, it will disable your antivirus. If you have access to delete everything on your drive, it will delete everything on your drive. Because once it gets in there, it may use your rights and permissions, or it may use a vulnerability inside of your operating system that allows it to get elevated rights and really take over your system. Those can be pretty much a deal breaker when that happens. So let's go through this list that we had. We know now that D, you executed a Trojan horse, was the right answer. 51% of you got that right. That's my goal, by the way, to have about 50% of you get a question right. I want 50% of you to get a question wrong, I guess, if you look at it that way. But if the idea is to be able to learn something as we're going along here, I'm trying to make the questions hard enough so that you can do that. So we accomplished that with this question. But why isn't it one of the other questions? So A was your system is infected with ransomware. Well, with ransomware, the bad guys want your money. They don't want your system to stop working. They absolutely would like you to send them money so that you can get the decryption key and get all of your files back. So you're never going to have a system turn off and then make it so that it won't boot up. That's not anything good at all. So it's probably not ransomware. And by the way, the question asked, what has most likely just happened, and most likely it's not ransomware. 4% of you said a botnet is using your computer. And again, a botnet needs your computer to work. That's the whole point of having that botnet on there, so that a third party can then tell your computer to do other things. So if your computer's not working, the botnet's not working. So it's not a botnet either. 4% also said your system has been phished. Sort of a wrong use of the word phish. Phishing is when somebody is asking you for personal information and you're giving it up because you think there's somebody you can trust. And in this particular case, this has nothing to do with you giving up personal information. You were just trying to install a new program, and now suddenly your system is crashed and it won't start anymore. That's definitely not phishing. We had 32% of you said a rootkit is installed. Well, a rootkit might have been installed, but again, a rootkit needs your system to work. And a rootkit usually sits in a way that you don't even know it's there. In this particular case, our system is not working, and there's something obviously there. Something obviously happened. This is not something silent like a rootkit being installed. There have been rootkits in the past that have been installed along with other software, but then they embed themselves in your system. You don't know they're there. It's hard to find them because they are a rootkit. And so it's not a case where your system just won't boot anymore, so that you have that problem. The correct answer, 52% of you executed a Trojan horse. Now, some of you in the chat room are going, well, could the Trojan get into the BIOS of our system? Technically, yes, it could. We thought about this idea of someone corrupting a BIOS or infecting a BIOS, and there have been cases in the lab where somebody performed a case where, I was able to do it, when there was never anything really widely out in the world, in the wild, we call it, where someone was using some vulnerability to modify a BIOS in a way that would give them access to the BIOS later, or access to your system later. But the capability was there, which is why we came up with the new versions of BIOSes that have a digital signature that is checked when you turn your system on. And if the digital signature doesn't match, something isn't quite right with that BIOS, the BIOS has got a digital signature associated, your operating system has a digital signature associated related to the BIOS, all of those things have to match. If suddenly your BIOS started and it wasn't properly digitally signed, then it wouldn't start up at all. It's one of the benefits of using that UEFI BIOS versions to do that. So hopefully you got that one right. You executed Trojan horse. Don't run software you have no idea where it's coming from, or you might be running a Trojan horse as well. Let's quickly, let me tell you about things you might run into with not just Trojan horses, but everything else. The 901 exam and the 902 exam have so much information associated with them. Hardware, operating systems, security, networking, troubleshooting, it's all in there. Now, fortunately, I have notes that you could take from my videos. I don't know if you've ever seen all of my videos, by the way, available for free. You can watch every minute of every video. You don't have to register. You don't have to give me your email address. You just watch them. They're on YouTube. They're on ProfessorMesser.com. And every minute of every video is available for you to watch absolutely free. But there's a lot of information in these videos. There's a huge amount of information in these videos. And so what I've done is, I know that a lot of people said, I can't write down everything that's in these videos. I can't keep up with everything. So what I did is I wrote them down for you and created a series of course notes that would allow you to do exactly that. I've just taken everything that's important from all these videos, all of the CPU sockets and all the RAID information and the 802.11 speeds, all of the different interfaces you need to know. They're in the course notes. They're all there waiting for you. And I've made them available on my website. They're a PDF. It's one that you can download and put on all of your personal machines. You can print it out if you want to, but I also have book versions of it as well. If you don't want to print it out, I have a color book version of it. It's got the same exact information. It's just in a printed form. This is what they call a book. It's made from dead trees. And it's all here. It's exactly the same as the digital version. But some people, actually it was Mrs. Professor Messer that said, are you going to make a book of that? I said, why do I make a book? I have a digital version. Digital is so much better than books. And she said, well, I like books better. I thought, well, she's right. Some people prefer having a physical book. And actually, it's pretty nice to have a physical book you can take along with you. And if you buy the physical book, I give you the digital version for free too. So that's kind of nice. You can go either way. If you already have the digital version, you would like to upgrade, there's no additional cost. You pay the extra difference to be able to get the physical book. I'll be glad to do that for you as well. Just send me an email. Go to the top or the bottom of the website. There's a Contact Us link. Send me a note or send it to james@professormesser.com. And I'll send you a coupon where you can purchase the book and then you'll get all the money back that you've already spent. So it's a one-to-one. These are pretty good notes. People like them, and I think they can help you. I don't accept donations to my website. I prefer you get something for money that you spend. Not that I might someday take a donation. So I'm not ruling it out. Let me be clear. But I like to have something I can give you in return. So think of it as a way of a donation and I give you something back so I don't feel guilty. Maybe that's what it is. So hopefully that's something you can look at as well. Go to professormesser.com/A+CN. There's also links from the top of my website. There's links everywhere for these course notes. They help keep everything here up and running. It's not easy to keep the lights on. So I appreciate all of your help. It really does go a long way to keep all of this going. And it helps me because I have to create new content all the time as well. I just finished a new Security Plus course. I'm in the process of building out a new Network Plus course. You've already seen the new videos for those already hit. I recorded about 9 more videos yesterday. So today's edit day. So this is what keeps all of this going. Thank you so much for all of your support. Let's do another question. I've got one for you right here. Oh, I like this one. Those of you on the podcast aren't going to like this one because it's sort of a picture daily double. An image is on the screen of some type of connector, and it says, what would you most likely be powering with this connector? This is also, by the way, a non-multiple choice question. This is a fill in the blank. So you've really got to figure this one out. If I had to describe the connector, it looks like it has, it's one connector or two connector. It's hard to tell. It's like it's two connectors. Both of them have 4, pins on it. I've got a better picture of this. Here it is. It has each one of them has 4 pins, I guess, and they're kind of squarish, kind of rounded on the bottom, but square all the way rest of the way. And they're in a square group of 4, and there's 2 of them. So maybe that will help those of you on the podcast, or those of you who are just listening and would like to maybe understand, what does this picture look like? It's a black connector. Looks like it has latches on the top. It's like that's what those are. No latches on the bottom. I guess that's at the top. I guess it's all relative, isn't it? To have all of those there. What would you do with that connector? Hopefully you know. You can fill in the blanks. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can tell me what you think this connector is for. A lot of you are giving me answers, and they're all over the place, by the way. Yeah, some of you are spot on. Some of you, I think you might know what these are. Some of you taking a stab, and you should absolutely guess. That's one thing on the exam. You aren't going to get a lot of fill in the blank on the A+ exam. It's not like the Linux Plus exam. Linux Plus has a lot of fill in the blank. A+, not so many of these. And fortunately, a lot of the questions on the A+ are multiple choice. Always take a guess. Never leave a question blank. It does not appear that you are penalized for guessing. Some exams you take, and if you get a question wrong, there are points that come away off of the top. Like all the points you've earned, now you have those points taken away. It's not like that on the A+. So never leave a multiple choice question blank. If you're down to 2 minutes left and there's 10 questions, mark them all A, I guess. Mark up something. It's all random. You've got to guess something there. There might be free points for you to do that. In this case, you can't do that. I didn't give you multiple choice. So you have to figure out what this connector is, this weird black connector with the latches on top. It looks like it's 2 connectors, but maybe it's 1, and there's a group of 4 on each side. What is this for? What the heck do you do with this? Well, this is what you do with this. Here it is. This is an 8-pin EPS plus 12-volt power connector. You may see this referred to as an EPS 12V. I might just say EPS, or it might have 12V on the cable itself. Sometimes there's writing on the cable on the end of it. Usually there is if you've got a good power supply that came with good cables. And it will say exactly what this is. We call this a 4+4 connector because it's one where you could use all 8 of them together, which is why they're sort of squished together this way. In fact, they're kind of got a little latch on the back that helps you keep them there. Or you can use them as 4-pin connectors, which very often that's what you usually see this one being used for, are 4-pin connectors. Usually it's a CPU connector. So if you've got a server that has multiple CPUs, your motherboard is not going to be able to power those properly. So there will be additional CPU connectors. Usually they're right around the CPU. You'll see these 4-pin connectors. That's what this is for. You might only use one of them. So you kind of break it apart. It's got a little latch. You unlatch it, and now you have 2 4-pin connectors, and you use one of those to power that particular CPU. The problem with this one, a lot of you did answer, oh, that's from a graphics card. And you're almost right. It's almost, you really can't see the difference on this one, except I did show you that they were broken in 2. So you would get the idea, because there are PCI Express power connectors that are 8-pin connectors that look very similar to this. In fact, they look almost identical to this connector when you put them together for all 8 pins. And they are keyed differently, though. If you try to plug in, you put these 8 pins together and you try to plug it into your graphics card, it's not going to work because they are keyed. You can almost see the keys. You can't see them on this screen. You can kind of see them on this screen a little bit better because some of them, this one right down here, for instance, that I've highlighted in the bottom left is completely square all the way around. But notice all the others have a little divot taken out of the corners on the bottom. This one's also square all the way around. So they're keyed in a particular way that would prevent you from putting it in the wrong place. I should restate this. They are keyed so that I cannot put them in the wrong connector on my motherboard, because I certainly would if I was trying. You know, it's dark, it's small places, it's very easy to confuse the cables. This is another way as a sanity check to keep you from doing that. So if you're somebody who put through in this connector that it's maybe a motherboard connector, it's a CPU connector, some of you are spot on with the name of the connector. You were absolutely right. The 8-pin EPS12V. Some of you wrote that in after the fact. You're not fooling me. I can see when these come in. So I know some of you snuck it in there, but you're not graded on this, so you don't have to do that. It's okay. It's what you know. It's all about you. It's about you going through all of these. So let's do another one. We got time for another question. Let's do one that has nothing to do with Windows. And of course, on your exam on the 22902, you could get a question that has nothing to do with Windows. This is one of those. The question is, one of the applications on your MacBook Pro is crashing. Imagine that. Which of these, just because it's Mac OS doesn't mean there's not bad application programmers. Trust me. One of the applications on your MacBook Pro is crashing. Which of these would be the best way to gather more information about this problem? Would it be A, Event Viewer, B, apt-get, C, Console, D, Crash Log, E, Performance Monitor? One of those would be the best way to gather more information about this problem. Hopefully you're able to go through some of these. Hopefully some of you have been working with Mac OS, or at least understand where you might look at some of these things. This is becoming pretty common, by the way. Oh, by the way, if you want to answer this question, go to professormesser.com/QA. And please don't answer or give me any hints in the chat room. This is something you're probably going to want to be familiar with. There are companies that are rapidly either adding Mac OS into their infrastructure. There's some companies that are primarily Mac OS, interestingly enough. Not a lot of them, but a lot of smaller companies that were able to start with Mac OS have just stayed with Mac OS. And you may be in a situation where you have to be able to administer Linux, Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, Windows Phone. You never know what you might be faced with as a technician. So you have to be able to sit down at a Mac OS device and figure out where you can get this information from. So that does come in handy. Yeah, I do see a lot of Mac OS with education in the United States. A lot of K through 12, a lot of Apple in K through 12, a lot of iOS in K through 12. So you do need to know some of these things. So if the applications on your MacBook Pro are crashing, which happens to me, it seems way too much. I was having a problem just yesterday with my Keynote app, and I used one of these things to tell me more information of why this app was just crashing. And when we're done with this, I'll tell you what I did to be able to get through there. Let's see how everyone did with this one. We'll bring up the answers. How do we do? Well, we're sort of torn, just like everybody with Mac OS. How does this work again? The mouse doesn't even feel right, does it? This is the challenge going between operating systems. 39% of you said crash log, letter D. 27% of you said console, which was C. We have 16% said event viewer, 13% said performance monitor, and 4% said apt-get. So I didn't fool anybody with the apt-get. I only fooled a few people with apt-get. But everything else is sort of hazy. We're not really sure where to go with Mac OS. Well, the best place to go to find out exactly what's going on, Matt in the chat room was right. The console sounded kind of Mac-y, kind of Mac OS-y, kind of something you'd see in a Mac. You're absolutely right. It is console. There's an app that is in your utilities folder in Mac OS that is called console. Sort of a simple name. We're used to these flowery names for Apple. They just save that for the products. The Mac OS console, though, an amazing amount of information is in the console. You'll be able to know second by second what's happening with your system behind the scenes. And yesterday, when I'm trying to run Keynote, I'm trying to shoot video, I use Keynote as the presentation software that I use for all of my videos and for what we're doing here. And I would be working in it and it would just disappear. Not even an error message, just gone. That's pretty unusual for an app to do something like that. But this, by the way, this is a new machine that I migrated from another iMac to this iMac relatively recently. It wasn't that long ago. It was a few weeks ago. It was after, I guess it was a couple weeks ago, because it was after Security Plus. Maybe it was just before the Security Plus study group. But I went in and saw in the console that it was a segmentation fault. So there was some type of issue relating to that. It was very easy at that point to Google Keynote segmentation fault and have people go, oh, just clear the cache. Clear your cache out and you're fine. And they were right. I cleared the cache and it works great now. We're rolling right along. So things like that can absolutely bite you when you're getting into those particular situations. And those of you that answered console, 26% of you said console, absolutely right. Event Viewer A and E Performance Manager are Windows utilities. So it would not be those. apt-get is the program that you could use on a number of Linux distributions that will allow you to install new software or update the software that you've already installed. And crash log, I kind of made that up. Not a Mac OS thing, not a Windows thing, not really a Linux thing. Maybe there is something called crash log out there, not anything that you would use in this particular situation. In this case, the best way to gather more information would be C console. 26% of you got that one right. I guess we need to work a little bit more on our Mac OS stuff. Maybe that would be helpful if we got into some of those. Maybe that would help us figure out where we needed to go with all of that. There is a challenge when you're dealing with things like Mac OS or we're dealing with Linux. It may be an operating system that you've just never really gotten into before. And if you've never used Mac OS or you've never used Linux or you've never used these operating systems, or maybe you've never used Windows 7 or even Windows Vista, and those are on the exam objectives, you're going to need some way to get some hands-on. And thankfully, the folks at GCS Learning have live labs. And their live labs include not just live hands-on, but it also includes a copy of their book, which, by the way, I used their book to help me create these videos because it's just straight to the point. There's no messing around. They tell you exactly what you need to know to learn the topics required for the exam. The live labs are pretty nice. Do I have the live labs up here? I do. These are the live labs, installing Windows, understanding TCP/IP, identifying security threats. Let's do, did they have a Linux command line? Let's run the Linux command line and start that one up. And maybe they'll pop open some Windows devices for this. And have that there. The answer was C console on this. And by the way, this is a virtual environment. I'm going to power on all of these devices. We've got 3 devices here in this particular lab, and it takes you through the lab step by step. So you know exactly what to click on. They've got screenshots here. You can make this much bigger than what you're seeing on my screen. I've got everything scrunched down so you can see it. But these Windows machines are up and running. So it also uses
more of, since it's all virtualized, I'm getting into these systems and looking at them through this very simple front end. So I can go to all of these. The Live Labs, by the way, you have to use this link to get this special price. If you go to the GTS Learning site, the price is a little bit more than this. You don't want to pay too much. Go to professormesser.com/livelabs and get their special price to be able to use all of these systems, be able to get them up and running. This is what I like to use whenever I'm working through and trying to figure out how am I going to do this in an operating system, and you need a quick way to run through a lab to see how do I do that? Okay, this is how I would go in, use these labs, run through a scenario, or I take a screenshot and put it into the utilities. Some of the real-time demonstrations that I do in my videos, I've just got a live lab up because it's already there. It's in a browser. I don't have to load any software up to get it running. It works so quickly and easily. That may be something that's useful to you. You may want to use your own lab, build your own lab, but this is something that's already available to you. Plus, it comes with a book. It comes with some Q&A straight from the folks at GTS Learning, and they certainly know what they're doing. Find out more about this, professormesser.com/livelabs. I think we have time. We certainly have time for another question. This is a question that I think I did a couple of years ago, but I wanted to run through this question again to maybe see if some of you might know this one. This one is again a not sort of a multiple choice, but you have to pick two for this particular question. And the question is, which of these two interfaces share the same physical connector type? And I've got these listed. Looks kind of wonky on the screen here, but we can see it pretty well. So here are 6 different interfaces. So which two of these share the same physical connector type? We've got A, HDMI, B, Thunderbolt, C, DisplayPort, D, Serial, E, Mini DisplayPort, F, SATA. So there are two interfaces here that have exactly the same physical connector type. What are they? If you think you know the answer, put them into professormesser.com/QA, and you'll be able to see this one. Remember, don't answer in the chat room. You want to go to professormesser.com/QA. No hints either. Yeah, this is one where once you do it, once you see it, once it's there, once you use it, you know it. You have it. You've got it. Sometimes that's what you need for a lot of these questions is just some practical hands-on. Make sure you get as much hands-on as possible. Get a good book, watch my videos, do some Q&A, and get as much hands-on as you can. I think there's something that about the hands-on where it's just solidified in your brain. There's a synapse that gets stuck there that fires, that has all of those pieces there. And maybe that's one that you know as well and able to work through those. This is one where you might run into this too. This can be confusing. Can you imagine two differently named interfaces that look exactly the same? Is that a worst case scenario for most of us? I like that most of the interfaces look different. I can look at it and know exactly what it is. But this is when you look at, you might not know exactly what it is to be able to figure this one out. Hopefully, a lot of you have answered this one already. This is one, since it's fill in the blank, I can't really show answers here. A lot of you are familiar with this one for sure and having those pieces there. So here is the answer. Which two interfaces share the same physical connector type? It is Thunderbolt, B, and Mini DisplayPort, which is E. Those are the two that are identical. And it's not that it was a mistake. This was intentional to make these identical. This is part of the standard. We started more with the Mini DisplayPort. That's where this interface really started with. And the Mini DisplayPort, pretty useful. Some of you have a larger DisplayPort connector, maybe on a video card. If you purchased an external video card, that DisplayPort connector is one that's kind of big. And on my videos, I show you the difference between a Mini DisplayPort and a standard DisplayPort. But the Mini DisplayPort being so small is perfect for things like laptops. So you started to see a lot of companies would put the Mini DisplayPort on their laptops. It was certainly one you saw a lot. Apple really grasped onto the DisplayPort, the Mini DisplayPort, and put it on a lot of their products. but it's a standard. It's a standard. I think it's an Intel standard. It's not open standard, but in Intel's standard format. So a lot of people had DisplayPort and mini DisplayPort interfaces. And then Apple wanted to, and Intel said, we could do more with this port. Let's put more data on this port. We can do more than just video. Let's transfer files. Let's have a big 10 gig connection or more coming out of this single port. And that's what they did. They created Thunderbolt that really created a high-speed data as well. But it was also included that little video channel. So although it was the same port, you always know there's probably going to be mini DisplayPort on there. The real question is there Thunderbolt as well? So if you see this port, you really do have to check the specifications for the piece of hardware that has this to find out what's really running on that particular interface. But on my previous systems that I had here in the studio, I had a lot of Thunderbolt, and the video display that I was using had a mini DisplayPort connector that I was using into my Thunderbolt connectors on my iMac. Now that I've swapped out my iMac, it's now the USB-C type connectors primarily on there. So I don't have a lot of those still there and available. We got time for one more question. We can slide this one in really quick to get one. One more. Everybody wants one more. Yes, I agree. One more. Here we go. Here's your question. Oh, it's a long one. Let me click next on my side so I can actually fill you in on what the question is. The question is, you're in the process of purchasing new software for your department. When you provide your manager with the purchase information, she asks you for the EULA. Which of these would best describe the information your manager needs? Would it be, if I click the right buttons, would it be A, licensing details, B, storage requirements, C, total cost, D, lead time, or E, internal software approval? So you're in the process, you're buying some new software for your department, you take it to your manager and say, this is what we want. Your manager asks you for the EULA. Which of these would best describe the information your manager needs? Would it be licensing details, storage requirements, total cost, lead time, or internal software approval? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. You will absolutely be asked for this by your manager. There's no question. I used to be on the other side. I used to be the person who was selling the product. I was really the systems engineer. I worked with someone who was a salesperson. I was the person who the salesperson said, make it work, and I had to make it work. But very often we'd say, the customer would say, we want to buy this product, but we need the EULA. So this came up quite a bit. We need a EULA. We're like, okay, why do you need that? That's this question. Why do you need that? And that's one you might run into too if you're watching this for continuing education credit and you're wondering, how can I get an hour of webinar time? Well, you simply go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. There's a Contact Us link. Contact us, really contact me. It sends me a note. You can put anything in there, pops up a form, put in your name, put in your email address, because that's how I get this continuing education unit credit back to you. Put in there somewhere that this is the March 2018 A+ study group, and put a special code word in there somewhere of EULA. And then you can put whatever else you like there too. I like reading through them. A lot of you will leave notes in there, and I appreciate that. I can't reply to all of them. I get so many continuing education unit requests in. I can't reply to every single one of them, but I do read every single one of them, and I do appreciate it. Thank you. Most of them are very nice. Most of them have nice things to say, thankfully. So that's one way you can get your continuing education credit. We snuck it in there, didn't we? With 2 minutes left. Usually I do it before that. Let's see what this possible answer is. If you're buying some software, let's see what you folks said. Then we'll figure out what the answer is. 91% of you said licensing details. So what is that really right? Did we all go off the deep end? Nobody said lead time. 6% of you said internal software approval. 2% said total cost. 1% said storage requirements. This means that I made it too easy. That's what happened. EULA, the end user license agreement. Let's flip through on this slide till we get to EULA. There it is. So the end user license agreement, that's the thing when you always install a piece of software, it pops up this box, the thing you don't read, the thing you scroll all the way to the bottom, And you click, yes, I agree with everything that I didn't just read there. That's the EULA. Now, the problem is if you're buying some software, there may be things in there that would prevent you as the end user from doing things you might want to do. And the worst time to find out is after you bought the software. So it's very common if you're buying software, large amounts of software for large companies and small companies alike, for somebody to say, hey, before we buy this, tell me how the licensing works with this. Send me the contractual agreement. That's effectively what it is. It's a contract you're making with this company that says, here's how we're going to use this software. And it's an important thing to read through. So a lot of times they'll hand it off to their legal team. The legal team will go, we don't like that statement, and we'd like to add this statement. So there's a little negotiating that goes back and forth. And then the person you're buying it from says, we can certainly make that change, but it's going to affect your discount. Have I been through this before? Yes, I have. It's all give and take and figuring it out. But eventually you figure out what a good licensing agreement is and you end up buying it and everybody's happy. Or nobody's happy. Maybe that's how it works. Those of you that answered licensing details, absolutely right. That's what a EULA is. That's what it is. I wondered where we'd get this EULA from. That's what. Now, if you're wondering, what does this have to do with anything? What does a EULA have to do? Well, all of these questions, everything that you've seen today, come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you don't have these objectives, you've lost your mind. This is what you should start with. This is the first thing you should get into your hands when you're ready to earn your certification. CompTIA gives you an amazing list of everything you need to know before you walk into the exam. So you don't have to ask me, what are the things I need to know before I walk into the exam? Because if you ask me that, and people often do, and that's fine. You can, if you really want me to ask, I'll tell you. I'm good at answering these questions over and over because I know the answer. The answer is, go get the exam objectives. It's a perfect checklist. It tells you everything you need to know to be able to do that. It becomes very useful to have this information. Not everybody who does certifications can provide this level of detail. You're not going to find it from Microsoft. You're not going to get it from Cisco. You're not going to get it from VMware. You're not going to get it from Checkpoint. None of those companies are going to give you this level of detail. If you don't have this, you're doing yourself a disservice. Make sure you get this. I can't say it enough. Get the exam objectives. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives. I'll just redirect you over to the CompTIA site so you can download them. It's the perfect checklist before you walk into your exam. And it's free. Why wouldn't you want this? It's perfect. Go get it. Make sure you get those exam objectives. We've come to the end of an hour. Can you believe it? There is, of course, another one of these next month. It was so much easier when the months were 28 days long. Everything was exactly the same time the following month. But now we've broken out of that. We're into March. So the next Live A+ study group on April the 4th, 2018, the first Wednesday of April. And you can find out if you're not remembering when that is. You can always go to professormesser.com/calendar. Or if you're watching this after April the 4th, you can go to professormesser.com/calendar. So there's a couple of ways that you could keep track of what's going on here. We love to have you here to be able to do that. See, some of you in the chat room are very good about asking questions that have been asked multiple times. Thank you so much. So make sure you check. We got our daily pop quiz, A+ pop quiz every weekday. You can find that on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter. Of course, all my A+ videos are available for you to watch on professormesser.com/YouTube, although the transcript of those is available on professormesser.com. So if you prefer to also have a transcript to go along with it. And of course, all of my videos, by the way, all the training videos are closed captioned by human beings. So you've got 99% accurate closed captioning if you ever want to turn that on. If maybe English isn't your first language or you're trying to figure out what is he saying, the people that do the transcripts watch the videos as they're doing it. So they can pull the words and usually they get it pretty good. They're not perfect. Nothing's perfect with transcripts, but those are pretty darn good. To have that there. Don't forget about the course notes, professormesser.com/A+CN, and the pop quiz collection, professormesser.com/PQC for pop quiz collection. My thanks again to GTS Learning, longtime partners, and great people to work with. If you ever have questions, I always find out how a company is when things go wrong, because sometimes mistakes are made, or somebody has a question, or something's not working the way they would expect. These guys will take care of you. And you can find out more about GTS Learning's Live Labs, professormesser.com/live labs. We do one of these every month. Next week's a Network Plus study group. The week after that, Security Plus study group. Then I take a week off and breathe, and then we do it all over again. Maybe I should break up the A plus to be a 901, 902. We have an extra week in the month, right? Is that what I should do? Tell me. You should leave a comment on this video, or just send me a note at the top of the Professor Messer website. Stick around. We got open phone lines. We're just going to open up the phone lines, and we'll have you folks tell me whatever you'd like to tell me. It can be about A plus. It can not be about A plus. It can be about anything. It's the open phone lines. Stick around. If you have to go, I understand that as well. I thank you for being here. I appreciate it. We could not do this without you, and it's a lot of fun when you're here answering these live with us. We will see you next time on the A Plus Study Group. Actually, we'll see you right now on the after show. All right. The formal show is over. Not really. The after show is sort of a call-in. It's kind of a show unto itself. It's the after show to have this here. So let me bring up the phone lines on my side. I don't have anybody here to do this for me. I have to do this. I have to click these myself and have these here, but I've got them ready to go. So let's start a show. You know what I didn't do? I didn't start the Skype on my machine. Let's go to my shows. We're going to host a show. This is all done in the cloud for me too. I have to call into my own show through Skype. And I'll tell you in a moment how you can call in on a show through Skype. And I'm going to make sure I put this here so you don't see the secret things that I'm using to go through this. How does this work again? This is always the challenge when you're off for a week. Let's call this number. Beep, 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 beep. If I got this potted up, I don't. So I can't.
Thank you for
well, there it is.
Studios.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Please enter your show number and
well, my show number. I don't have enough hands for this. What is my show number after all? It is this and this and this, and then I click this thing, and then it says
enter your 6-digit PIN number.
Okay, that worked. Yeah, can I do it on the keyboard?
That was an invalid PIN for Professor Messer.
It was not.
Enter your 6-digit PIN.
Okay. That wasn't right either. Oh, man.
Sorry, that is not a valid PIN number.
Oh, at least she knows.
Messer. Goodbye.
Oh, and goodbye. So those of you that are calling in right now, stay on the line. I will be there as soon as I can figure out how to do this myself. This is a little bit of a challenge now. I'm doing this all
greener line.
I'm doing this all left-handed. That's a long story too. So now
enter your 6.
Okay. Now I got it. And this and this and this, and I click this thing and then a pound sign.
You are now in the host.
See, who said it was going to be difficult? Boy, let me tell you, this was the problem between the keyboard and the chair, I assure you. But if you would like to call in, you're more than welcome to. You can do that using the toll-free number 855-785-RJ45. Or you can call on Skype anywhere in the world for free with Skype. I pay for it all. +1, just take a +1 at the beginning, and then 855-785-7545, and you'll be able to call in. You'll be stuck in a queue. I can only fit so many people in the queue, but if it's busy, just try back. You'll be able to hear when people are hanging up or going off the line or doing all of those things too. And of course, I'll be taking some questions in the chat room as well. So you can go to professormesser.com/live, and I see all of you in the chat room. We can do that. We can talk about what's going on there as well. Let's take our first call, the 716 area code. It will beep in your ear. Caller, tell me your name. Where are you calling from? See, you have to listen into the call too. Are you there, caller? I hear me. So, well, there's a phone. Are you there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Not at all. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, my name is Brian. I'm calling from Asheville, New York.
Welcome. What can we?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you great, Brian. So what can we do for you today?
Yeah, I'm supposed to sit for an exam shortly. It's a New York State exam for a PC specialist.
I think I've heard
And I'm
of this.
assuming there would be a lot of overlap with the A+. Are you familiar at all with exams for civil service jobs in New York?
I have heard of it. That is the extent of my knowledge associated with that particular exam.
Okay.
But I've heard other people say, I have to take it as well, and they're using A+ materials to study from. I've just never gotten into the details of it to know what's there, but I'm sure they must have a set of exam objectives, correct?
Well, I'm trying to get a hold of something like that.
Oh, boy.
But, I have not been able to.
That's not a good sign, Brian.
Yeah, it's rather vague.
So here, come take this test. Hope it goes well for you. That can mean two things. It could mean either it's going to be an easy exam for you, or it could mean that they've made it so impossible that why would you ever write anything down on a piece of paper? But there's got to be something out there somewhere, I would think, that'd be able to do that. And if anybody else is listening from New York and has seen this before or familiar, feel free to send me a note on my website, professormesser.com. I can tweet things out and let everybody know as well.
That would be great.
What are you doing to study then? How are you attacking this one?
I've been following you for a while. I've taken a lot of college courses in computers.
Okay.
I think I'm more than well prepared for this exam.
Good.
I'm just a fan of yours, and I thought I'd ask you that question.
It's a good question. I have not gotten into, well, there must not be enough people who are struggling through it. So that's a good sign. If I don't have people banging down my door saying, what a horrible exam I just had to go through, that must be a good sign. And it does sound like you've at least got enough knowledge and experience behind you to be able to walk in and do well with this piece of it. It sure would be nice to get a set of exam objectives, though, and then we could at least map these back. But I would imagine, like many things, they've probably taken a lot of it from the A+ exam as well, and maybe that will be enough to kind of see you through it.
I really appreciate that and all you do, and you've helped me a lot. I've followed you for a while.
I appreciate that.
And I will continue to.
Well, thanks, Brian. Best of luck. I will keep my ear open, keep checking the Twitter, and I'll see if anybody lets me know. I will certainly let everybody else know as well.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for calling. That's a challenge, right? You're expected to take an exam from the state. First, why are we taking state exams for computers? It's sort of, every state has this, by the way. I'm in Florida. Headquarters for Messer Studios is Florida. And we have crazy, you have to get certified if you're, cutting people's hair. Really, do you have to pay a license every usually it's sort of that one's one that takes care of itself, doesn't it? If you're not good at cutting hair, it sort of takes care of it. You don't need really the state to step in for that one. Other stuff I get. If you're working at the nuclear power plant, it's helpful to know that you know what you're doing. That's a different kind of issue. Let's go to the 905 area code. Caller, are you there? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi, my name is Matt, and I'm calling from Ontario, Canada.
Oh, welcome, Matt, the Mrs. Professor Messer, who is Canadian, 100% Canadian blood, but American citizen. Figure that one out. I'll let her know that you checked in.
Oh, nice.
What can we do for you today?
I just had a question for you. I'm going to be writing the A+ 902 on Saturday, and I noticed in a lot of the test questions that I'm doing, there tends to be a fairly strong focus on like the specific pathways to get to certain Windows utilities. And I'm wondering if I should be focusing on that, or if I should be focusing more on just sort of what those utilities are and what they do.
I have seen questions like this in a number of sample exams that says, you need to start this utility. How do you get there? Do you click Control Panel, Administrative Tools? Do you just click Control Panel? Do you have to start up Computer Management and then from there? I've seen these, and it's awfully confusing because in Windows, there's usually multiple ways to get to a place that you're trying to get to. The question, though, is about certainly some of those you should know how to find them. If you had to troubleshoot a problem and you needed to get to the list of users so you can change a password, you kind of need to know where that is. So I understand the questions and why they help you understand why you need to get to that piece of it. But the question about do they focus on it? If you look at the exam objectives from CompTIA, there is a section on the 22902 exam. It's in section 1, domain number 1, and it's maybe section 1.1 or 1.2, which go through a lot of these utilities. So if you were to extrapolate that out, that entire section of the exam is how many is that? How many somebody's probably beat me to it, but I want to know what the percentage of time is. I guess it was on the beginning of my presentation. I'll tell you in just 1 second. So on that exam, that entire domain, which includes installing Windows and everything else, I don't have it listed here, but it can't be more than 20, 25% of the exam. Somebody in the chat room will know exactly. They've got their exam objectives up and be able to have that there. But that is one topic within a series of topics that is in a much larger domain that's in a list of four other domains. So it's unlikely you're going to get 20 questions about that. You might get one, you might get two. And it's one of those situations I often tell people, if you're stuck on a particular topic, you might be better off just ignoring it. Take the hit if it happens to show up on the exam. Okay, I got that one wrong, but you got all the others right because you were able to spend more time. I often say this on the Network Plus exam because you might get one subnetting question and people tend to take a month to try to figure out IP subnetting and they just can't get it. And I understand that. So ignore it. Take the hit on that question and keep it moving. And in fact, they might ask the question. You'll think, wait, I think I know where that is. And then you'll be able to answer that question. If I were you studying, I would not be looking at all of these different possible utilities and trying to figure out all of the different ways I could start that utility up. I think what you should instead be doing is doing more hands-on, running through some labs, trying out some of the things you're seeing on the videos, and then you just sort of remember, oh yeah, that was in the control panel. Oh, that was in the administrative tools. I used that yesterday. That's probably the best way to study those.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a good route to go because I was worried that I was going to monopolize too much sort of memory space and study time and try to get all those little, sort of the minutia of those details down, which I don't want to do.
And I think ultimately the test doesn't have as much trivia as a lot of people think that it has. I think a lot of the exam is a scenario, and they want you to know how you're going to solve that scenario. That should be where most people should be spending the bulk of their time.
Okay, that makes sense.
Great. Well, good luck, Matt. Let us know how it goes.
That's great. Thanks a lot for your help.
Thanks for calling. That's good. All right, Canada checked in. I got to let Mrs. Professor Messer know. She always likes to know when that happens. Let's go to the 631 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Oh, you're breaking up a bit, caller. Let's see if you're able to come out of whatever that is. Let's try it again. What's your name? Where are you calling from? Oh, that's too bad. If you're calling in on Skype, I'm going to put you back in the queue. You may want to hang up, try the Skype call testing service. You can call Skype and talk to Skype, and they'll repeat back what they think they heard from you. That may be a way to test it, or maybe you're just in a bad cell right now. So I'm going to wait till you get on the other side of the bridge, and maybe it'll pop in there again, and then I'll come back to you. I've got you stuck in my queue for you to do that. Let's go back. Let's go to 231 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Yeah, hi. My name is Ned.
Hey, Ned.
I'm from Water, Michigan.
Welcome. What can we do for you?
So I'm currently hiding in a utility closet in my classroom because my teacher is asking about FAT32 files. Do you think you could give me a brief explanation on that?
Oh, there's nothing brief about FAT32, Ned. It's actually
well, could you at least tell me like the abbreviation? Because we have a fundamentals quiz coming up, and I would just like to have some information on it.
Have you ever stored a bunch of files? Do you ever have stuff from every class that you've taken? You've got all the notes that you've taken from every class, or you've got now documents that you've gotten from work. You have all these tax documents at this time of the year. You have to find some way to sort these things out so that you can find them later. And that's what a file system is inside of your computer, is a way to sort all of these different files out in a structured way so that when you ask for that particular spreadsheet or you want to start that particular application, your system now knows where it can go to find that. There's a lot of different file systems out there. We started with earlier versions of FAT, like FAT16. We moved to FAT32. But of course, these days, the most common one you run into Windows is NTFS. And of course, Linux has their own file systems. The Mac OS tends to use the Unix type file systems as well. But now even Apple has their own file systems that they like to be able to use. So there's also different file systems depending on the type of medium that you're using. For example, a CD-ROM has its own file system. So that's one of the challenges with trying to understand all of these different systems is on this operating system, what file systems does it use, or which ones can it write to or read from? If I take that drive and I move it to Linux, is Linux able to read that? And that's why a lot of people will still use the FAT32 file system, because it's been around forever. It's well documented. And if you're somebody who likes to move files between Windows and Linux and Mac OS and other operating systems, almost all of them can read FAT32. So it's a great sort of universal file system for reading data. But if you ever look into an operating system, they usually have one that they like to use, like NTFS in Windows, because that's the one that provides the most amount of functionality, the most amount of security, and it's probably the most efficient as well.
Okay.
Hopefully that will get you out of the...
I think my teacher's on to me, because now I hear your live stream in their room. So if you could do a quick shout out to a Mr. Hughes, that would be great.
See, Mr. Hughes, you should probably lock that room up so that nobody can go back in there and make phone calls or whatever they're doing in there. Best of luck, Ned.
Hey, thanks.
There he goes. He's stuck in there. You can imagine the room must be loud if he's stuck in the closet with the brooms. There's books everywhere. It's dusty. Nobody wants that. Nobody has to deal with that. Let's go back to the 631 and see if we came out of that bad cell. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Hello, my name is Chris. Can you hear me now?
Chris, you sound great. What can we do for you?
Yeah. First, I think it's just an issue with my carrier, so I'd have to look into that.
I would not be surprised.
Anyway, so I was wondering, I got my A+ certification last summer, and I'm trying to look into how I should approach getting a job. I was thinking of places like Best Buy or Staples, because I think those places have the opportunity for me to work with computers.
Not a bad option.
Also, yes. So, I mean, what do you think? How do you think about? I guess me, looking into, working those places.
One of the things about getting a job in this industry, and probably more appropriately to most people who are listening to this, is getting that first job in the industry is pretty important. And it also doesn't have to be the highest, most glamorous, or even the job that you're working towards. You need to get your foot in the door somewhere. Because when people are hiring, they're examining a lot of things about you. They're looking at your educational experience. They're looking at the things that you do when you're not at work. Maybe you have your own home lab and you've built your own systems, and you have an intrusion prevention system, and you have installed multiple wireless routers for your family. Those are valuable skills to bring to the table. They want to know what type of practical experience you have, because that also is a big part. I think that's where a lot of the stories come from during your interview, where they want to know what you did when you worked at these places. And if you can get some stories under your belt, you can then keep moving up. In this particular field, information technology in general, you aren't going to get your first job and stay at that company for 50 years. You're going to get that first job, stay a couple of years. You're going to grow out of it because you're going to learn things while you're there. and then you're going to move to a different job, and you're just going to keep moving up as you go. There's plenty of opportunities to move up in this particular industry, and that most people realize, most of your employers realize, they're going to get you for a little bit of time, and then you're going to move up. And as you move up, you probably stay a little bit longer. I think the last corporate job I had, I stayed there about 7 years. So before that, about 5 years. Before that, so kind of a diminishing return as I went on. Because once you get into these other jobs where you move up, you find finally these nice jobs that you're in, but you got to start somewhere. We had a call a few months ago, maybe it was last month, where somebody said, I'm looking at getting a job at Best Buy or at Staples. I want to get in and start with this equipment, but other people are telling me I really shouldn't do that. I should be looking to get higher, to move into more of a corporate job. Well, you should look to get whatever job you can. And whenever you get that job at Best Buy or Staples, you're going to be learning, and you're going to be able to use that when you move up to the job you want to have. The job you want to have is going to be something you'll be able to figure out for your next job. In IT, you can never predict where you're going to be in 10 years or 20 years, not even 5 years sometimes. What you can do is say, my next job, I want to do this. I'm working at Best Buy right now, but I want to work in a corporate environment. My first job was in IT. Technically, I guess it was while I was in college, where I was a computer operator with mainframes. And I would be in a small room, literally in the dungeon, in the basement of a building with all the other mainframes. I was there on the weekend because I was the student help. I was paid, not very much. I had bad hours. I had to come in Sundays at 7, and stay throughout the day. Sometimes had to do overnights. But when I was there, I decided, I really would like a job where I wasn't in a dungeon. And my first job out of college was one where I was more remote. I was in a car going places and installing systems or upgrading memory or installing hard drives or whatever. But then you get that job and you realize, wow, this is a lot of driving. I sure would like to be in a corporate environment. So I tried to work towards the corporate help desk gig and got in a corporate help desk. That's how it works. So don't be afraid to go after any of those kinds of jobs, whatever they happen to be. Once you get in, you're going to be building on it through your entire career. Just make sure you keep building on it and thinking about what the next thing is going to be.
Also, I had someone help build me my resume, but the first paragraph doesn't look quite right. I was wondering if you would, if there's a general idea of what should be changed, because it said something about repairing circuit boards and processors.
Okay.
But I kind of feel like that it should be changed around a little because it's mostly like software related things that I know about.
The people that are reading these resumes, well, there's two types of resumes you need to be creating. You need to be creating a resume that gets through the HR filter, because these things, a lot of the resumes these days, it's an automated process that you provide your resume information into the robot. The robot looks through the resume, looks for the keywords they're looking for, and then they send the resume up for somebody who's going to be talking to you over the phone and then hopefully talking to you in person. So you have to create a resume that has all the right buzzwords in it so it gets through the HR robot. But then the person who's going to be reading them, I will tell you from experience that they have time to go through at a very high level and read through the resumes. They're really looking to see, can you spell properly? Can you give me just the basic idea of what you know? And then I can look through the experience and see if this is really something that fits the particular job we're looking for. So don't worry so much on the verbiage. Make sure it is something you've done. If you haven't repaired circuit boards, then don't put in there that you've repaired circuit boards. But if you say, I've done Windows installations, I have clean antivirus, I have installed RAID arrays, whatever it happens to be, I'm a great technician for handling these types of things. That's really what the first paragraph has to be. It doesn't have to be flowery. It doesn't have to be the best. Nobody's hiring anybody based on that first paragraph. And at one point in my career, I just stopped writing the paragraph. You can see what I've done. Let's just have a conversation, because nobody reads through that junk at the beginning anyway. And quite honestly, half the interviews I went in, nobody even read my resume at all. They looked at the first half of the first page. and say, well, tell me about this. And then you're the one that has to take the conversation more. You shouldn't be waiting for questions. You should be having a conversation the whole time with the other person to help them through the interview process. Yes, they probably have some questions they want to go through, but they could throw them out most of the time. They really want to know more about you. Are you someone who would work well here? Are you someone who knows enough to be able to do the job? And that's really it. If we can match those two things together, let's get you started and get a warm body in there. Let's get some of these things going and get you moving up to whatever your next gig is going to be. That's your objective. And if the first paragraph doesn't sound like you, rewrite it so it sounds like you. Rewrite it so that somebody would look at it and go, hey, tell me more about this antivirus thing you've run into. Did you get any ransomware lately? What was that like? It should prompt those types of questions during the interview. Maybe that's something that might help, Chris.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because I know a few years ago I built my own computers, so
perfect.
Thinking maybe I want to include that in the first paragraph.
Those types of things, if it's something important like a certification, it's something that you've done that adds experience, get it in the first top half of the resume somewhere. Don't stick it on the back page under other things I've done, because nobody makes it back there. You want to have it up front in that first half of the page, because after that, nobody's reading the rest and very few are even getting that far. But if it's in front of them, most of the time they've got your resume in front of them during the interview, whether it's on the phone or in person, you can reference those things that are right in front of them. They can't miss what's there. I used to boldface terms. I used to be able to, on my resume, I would write things. Here's the paragraph of the things I've done, but I would put in bold, build computers. I put in bold, malware removal. I put in bold, those things that I wanted them to be sure they saw. And that actually worked pretty good.
Well, thanks for the advice, and yeah, I think I'll try that out on my resume.
Can't hurt. Might as well give it a shot. Thanks for calling, Chris.
Thank you.
That's always a challenge. And figuring out a resume that works for you, go through a lot of them. Figure out the one that works. The resume is something to help the conversation go. It's first to get through the bot and to get the phone interview. After that point, it's you. The resume is not important at that point. It's all about the conversation you have. You should run through sample interviews with people you know. They're going to be the interviewer. You're going to be the interviewee. Go. You walk in the room. Hi, how are you? Shake their hand. Have a seat. Well, thanks. Pick out things on their desk. Make a note of, oh, do you like blah, blah, blah? I saw they were in town last week. Those are the things that make the interview go so much better. You're going to be working with these people. They want to know that you can work with them as well. It's as much an interview of you as much as it is what you know. Let's go to 717 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, I'm Tanner, and I'm coming from Virginia, and I'm 13 and I'm homeschooled, and I'm going to take the 901 exam in less than a week.
Good for you. So how are you feeling about taking that in the next week?
I'd be lying if I was going to say I'm not nervous.
Well, that is perfectly normal. I'm the worst nervous person there is for a certification exam. I often tell the story that when I go into the exam room, I sit down and I look at the first question and I have no idea what I just read. I have to read it again and still don't get it, and then I have to read it the third time. There's too much adrenaline going, and then finally, after 5 or 10 minutes, I settle down. I'm not a great test taker in those environments, so don't sweat it. That's perfectly normal. Do you have questions though about your plans on that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you had any last minute tips on, how I should take the exam, because this is my first big exam. Okay. Absolutely, I do. And some of the things you should think about, first, there's knowing what is expected of you when you walk in the room. First, I mentioned earlier, make sure you have the exam objectives. They should be your checklist. So you should be going through everything on that list. And if you can explain it to yourself in a mirror, or you can explain it to someone else, then you probably know that topic well enough for the exam. Secondly, if you haven't seen the video on YouTube about the exam experience,
it can be extremely useful because if you've never taken one of these industry exams, they're all relatively similar in the process. You go in a room, the UI is almost the same on everybody's exam on the way they work. But on YouTube, if you search for, I'm going to try it here, CompTIA exam, I think it's experience is what I always type in. Taking a CompTIA exam. This is the video you want. It's called Taking a CompTIA Exam. And I'm going to turn this down. Let me maybe mute this for everybody who's stuck having to watch this and listen to that the bad stock music on here. But it shows you an exam room. It shows you people taking the exam. And then they show you the screens that you will see when you sit down on the exam. They show you the candidate agreement. And then they go through a number of different exam types that show things like where the buttons are, what the question looks like. It will show you where the button is to mark the question, how to flag it for review, which is a very useful strategy when you're in the exam. And they run through a number of different performance-based questions here as well. So if you've never sat for one of these exams before, this can be really useful to be able to see exactly what you might be in for. Because a lot of the problems on these exams is the fear of the unknown. You don't know what you're walking into. If you have an opportunity to visit your local exam center, go do it before you book your exam. For two reasons. One is that you'll now know where it is. You'll go inside, see the people at the desk. In fact, if you have the ability to ask them, hey, I'm taking an exam here next week. Can I have a look at what your exam room looks like just to see what's expected? Sometimes you'll run into some test centers where the exam room's a little bit scary. It's a closet. There's one desk in it. It's got an old CRT in there and a mouse that's got a ball in it that barely works. That's not a place you want to take your exam. And I've taken exams in exactly that scenario, much worse actually. But most testing centers, especially ones that are part of a training center, are very nice. They've got LCDs and they've got nice mice and keyboard. It's a comfortable environment. That may be something to think about too. So that you're comfortable, you know, when you get there that day, all right, you already know where you are. You already know what it looks like. You can walk in the door and concentrate on the topics at hand.
Yeah. So, and I did see this opportunity. Locally, I do have a program where you can get a 14-year-old job permit to workplaces.
Wow.
And, now, I was just wondering, experience. It's like it's the best thing you can get. And as a 13-year-old, it's kind of hard to find. So
you got
the best thing for them.
You got two problems. You've got one of experience, and then you've got an irritating problem of ageism, where someone who is perfectly capable at a particular age, either young or old, has problems getting someone to hire them. It's a bit of a problem at both ends of the spectrum to be able to run into this issue. But one of the things you have as an advantage at your particular age, and you should take advantage of this, is that your parents know people. You may have relationships in the community of people you know who are willing to hire you with really no expectation that you're going to do very well because of your age. And of course, you will surprise them, which is always nice too. But you will be able to oftentimes get a job where one didn't exist, and you can work for relatively low pay, minimum wage even, because you don't have to support yourself or family or a child right now, I'm guessing. And that gives you an advantage to get the experience easily, and one that you'll be able now, if you want to go on and get a college degree and come out of that college degree, now you have stuff on the resume that you can fall back on. That's kind of an advantage for you, but it's finding that person. When I was your age, the jobs I was getting were more agricultural. I was outside, I had a hoe in my hand. I was in the back of a truck in the morning. We go to the field. I'm in the back of the truck at night. That didn't really look so good when I was trying to get an IT job. If you can find even volunteer positions with nonprofits, with churches, with other organizations that just need somebody to make sure their systems are running okay. I'm going to stop in on a Saturday morning. We'll just run a virus scan. We'll make sure the system is running properly. If there's any problems with your printer, which there will be, I can have a look at that. Those are the pieces that might help you. So don't. In fact, those are good for anybody, not just you, but anybody who's trying to find a job. Volunteer. That absolutely put that volunteer work at the top of your resume, because that's practical IT experience. That's something you can use as well.
Sweet. Yeah. So, just trying to pursue my passion. But I thank you for your tips.
Good luck, Tanner. Absolutely. And let us know how it goes.
Yeah,
the exam's not an easy one, but it's always gratifying when you get through it. Best of luck.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Yeah, I was nowhere near that well-spoken with 13. Not even close. No. I was trying to figure out how to make the Atari work. That's next. Worked out okay, I think. Mrs. Professor Messer may not agree. The 404 area code, either caller, what's your name?
Hey, Professor Messer, this is Richie, calling from Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, welcome.
And I have a similar question to the previous caller. And I just, I have more of a personal interest in IT, and I'm actually a food scientist by trade, but just trying to get more experience.
Nice.
And I saw GTS Live Labs. Are there other books or seminars or something like that you would recommend for personal development in this field?
Oh, there's so many. But that's kind of the challenge, is figuring out which ones are good and which ones aren't. There is a couple of things that in IT we focus on, sort of a self-training primarily. There's also formal training classes that a lot of people will go to as well. Formal training classes are pretty expensive. I know, because I've gone to some and taken some and provided some in the Atlanta area before. And you're talking about thousands of dollars to sit in a chair for a week to learn something, which is, I think, why a lot of people go to the internet to try to gather this information. One of the advantages of IT, I think, is that the information tends to be readily available if you go out and look for it and grab those things. It doesn't discount the use of a formal training class, because there are certainly advantages to that, but it's not always something that everyone can afford. It's often more of a corporate type. You're already in a job and they want you to learn something more, so they're willing to invest that money.
Right.
I think a lot of people will start with, and I usually say 4 good things to be able to earn your certification. You need a good book, you need a good video series, you need some good Q&A, and you need some good hands-on. Those are the 4 big things, and those usually lead to other pieces. After that, sort of an adjunct is, now you can set up your own home lab. You can start using some of these tools and utilities you can find on the internet. You can set up your own wireless router. You can replace the firmware in your wireless router and run a different kind of firmware. You can install your own IPS. You can install your own security system or own firewall inside of your computers. Or set up your own voice over IP systems. Those are the things that kind of you extend after the fact. But if you stick to a good book, good videos, good Q&A, and good hands-on, you're 90% of the way there to doing what you need to do.
So is there an initial book you would recommend to start with, or a couple books?
Books they're so subjective. There's some books for some people that work really well, and some books, the same book for someone else may not work well at all. I like the GTS Learning books, but I focus on the GTS Learning because my focus is on the certification side of things. I'm trying to give you exactly what you need to know for your certification, no more, no less, which is useful if you're getting a certification. But what if you're just trying to overall learn more about technology? There are other technology books out there for certifications. If you just look at A+, that go well outside the scope of the A+ exam to give you more of a holistic view of technology instead of just knowing what's on the exam. So I recommend people go to Amazon, pull up a bunch of A+ books. Amazon lets you read through them while you're there online. Read through a number of those books. See which ones tend to hold your interest. See which of the author's voice you tend to read well with. Those are the ones that that probably will work well with you. When I first got my A+ certification, I went all the way through one particular book. And then I used 2 books. So I grabbed the next book after I was done, and I thought I should have started with this book. This is written so much better for me. But a lot of people like the first book that I like. So it's not necessarily a popularity contest. It is very subjective to you.
Okay. Well, thanks. And I guess the GTS Live Lab, is that something, I guess, from my background, you think would be something I could benefit from?
I think that falls into that you need good hands-on, and the live labs certainly apply there. Okay. Some people will make their own labs. They'll run Windows on their own systems. They'll start up a good VM system and use that. I was mentioning on Reddit this week, somebody was looking for a Windows operating system that they could use to learn things on. They had Windows 10, but the exam deals with Windows Vista, Windows 7, and Windows 8. And I mentioned you can go to modern.ie, MODERN, like the modern world, modern.ie. And that takes you to a Microsoft website that's focused on developers who are trying to make the browser work properly with the applications. But they also allow people to download full versions of Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10, just to be used for non-production purposes. So testing purposes, it's not your desktop. You can't use these as your normal desktop. They time out after about 30 or 60 days anyway. But the licensing certainly allows you to download it. You can load it up in a virtual machine manager right on your desktop. So you could be running Windows 10, but you got Windows 7 in this window and Windows 8 in this window, and you can compare and contrast between all of them using the Microsoft VMs, and it doesn't cost anything. It's free. You can download them and use them right now. Microsoft doesn't require you register. You don't have to have the Microsoft ID or any of that. You just download them and use them. It's beautiful.
Great. That's a lot of great information. Thank you for your time. I appreciate all your resources you've provided for us.
Best of luck, Richie.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
That's always good to have free things. I like the free stuff. But once you use those labs, you think, I really need somebody to guide me through this. The live lab's going to be a good choice. And go have a look. They got a nice write-up for the live labs and videos on the GTS Learning site. You can see somebody using them and what they're doing with them. Let's go to the phones. The 865 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Professor Messer. My name is Mitch.
Hello, Mitch. What can we do for you today?
All right, so I just had a little question concerning my 902. I actually just got my 901.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you. Well, here, just a little background information for the 9. Actually, I had been recommended to do a lot of hardcore studying, a lot of hitting the books, as they might say.
Sure.
And so I did that for about 2 weeks prior to taking the 901, just nonstop. It kind of phased me out of reality.
Right.
To be honest with you. In that time, I forgot to feed my pet nematode.
Well, that could certainly be a problem because we know when you get into nematode abuse, it's one of the biggest problems in the United States when you have to worry about that. And certainly here in the South, it's one you'd run into all the time. Whenever I start worrying about that, maybe I need to get my head out of the book a little bit. Let's go to the 231 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, this is Levi, and I'm calling from the same classroom that Ned called from earlier.
Are you in the closet in the classroom? Or are you out of the closet in the classroom?
I am not in the closet.
Okay, so hope it sounds like things have settled down a little bit. Lee, what can we do for you?
A little. So I wanted to know the difference between like Windows 32 and Windows 64. I know on 64-bit, I know they can handle more than 4 gigs of RAM, but past that, I don't know too much.
And Microsoft hasn't helped at making the whole thing sort of weird and interesting and not really giving us good delimiters on why one would be better than the other one. And most people go to the memory part. And it's interesting that the memory is sort of a self-regulated, self-inflicted form of delineation between 32-bit and 64-bit. But it's one that you could, if Microsoft wanted to, and in many cases they have, you could run more than 4 gig of memory on a 32-bit operating system. Microsoft has chosen not to, and perhaps rightly so. The real difference, of course, between the operating systems is just how much a single CPU is able to handle at any one particular time. 32-bit operating systems work with 32-bit CPUs, and the CPU is able and the operating system able to operate together and process information 32 bits at a time. On a 64-bit system, that's doubled. But it's really more than doubled. 64-bit operating systems, that doubling of the address space and being able to calculate that much information at the same time is sort of the evolution of where we're going with computing. You know, back in the day when I was young and foolish, we had 8-bit systems. We had 16-bit systems. Now 32-bit systems finally came of age, and we've been using 32-bit systems for quite some time. So 64-bit is really just the next phase in doing what we're doing. But the problem is, how do you get people running these 64-bit systems? If you asked me, should I get a 64-bit system 10 years ago, I would say no, because the operating system has to be 64-bit, the CPU has to be 64-bit, and then all of the software that you're using for operating system device drivers, everything about the operating system also has to be 64-bit. And quite honestly, at that time, it was hard to find a print driver that was a 64 print driver that would work reliably. But now, because of the evolution of all of this, everybody's jumped on board to 64-bit. You rarely see a 32-bit system sold new any longer because of that. It's a more capable operating system. It's a faster operating system and hardware environment. And it's one that now allows us to move further along. And in many ways, it does help with the memory management as well. And of course, there are 120-bit operating systems that are out there that people are using. They're not mainstream. It's not something you find from Microsoft with Windows, but we will continue that evolutionary process. 64-bit's going to work pretty well for us for the time being for quite some time. But certainly in a server environment, you're starting to see them stretch out to even larger, because the larger the numbers, the faster the systems are going to be, and the more capabilities you'll be able to have with the operating system and the applications that are running on them. Don't worry so much if you're trying to decide, how should I make this work? The big delineation as far as Windows is concerned, really based on how much maximum memory you're able to use in those systems. And for the purposes of the A+ certification, that's a pretty good delineation. You can stick with those two things, and that's your biggest difference between the two.
So do you think 128-bit systems will ever become standard, or 256?
Oh, sure. Of course it will. Because that's the way we do things. You know, we're going to look back at 64-bit and say, can you believe we use those pathetic 64-bit operating systems? I'm so surprised. But of course, I'm running a system right now with 18 cores in it and 128 gig of memory. And in 5 years, this is going to be boring too. So that's the natural progression of technology, which is good. You're always going to have a job.
All right. Well, perfect. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I appreciate your call. It's always something to worry about, of course. How's this going in the future? When I started in information technology, there wasn't an internet. How were we ever supposed to think that I'd get to a point where I'd be able to stream live around the world, take phone calls, and be able to do any of this? It's ridiculous. It's stupid. How does that happen? But it did. And so what happens over the next 10 or 20 or 30 years? It's really going to be stupid. Who knows what's going to be going on with that? We don't. And figuring out the pieces of it. It's all about figuring out where things are going, or watching where things are going and thinking, I'd like to do that too. I'd like to have that system and be able to work through those. That's pretty good. That's a challenge for anybody who's working through technology, is trying to figure out where to go. Don't worry about the 5 and 10 year plan. You'll never be able to figure it out. And quite honestly, opportunities are going to show up right at your doorstep that will surprise you. That suddenly now you're doing this. Well, that's the beauty of technology. It allows that to happen. Some questions from the chat room. Is there going to be a huge difference between now talking Network Plus, the N10006 and the N10007? So now we're skipping over the Network Plus. And of course, this is wide open. You can ask any question you would like. We can talk about any topics you'd like. For those not familiar, the N10007 is a new exam series from CompTIA that was released 7 days ago on March the 1st. So it's a brand new networking exam. Previous to that, for the last 3 years, we've had the N10006. If you look at the exam objectives, they're in a different order between the 6 and the 7. Not really that different content-wise. There's a few extra things that were added in the 007. There wasn't much that was taken away from the 006. One of the things about networking that you'll find as you go through this industry is that the networking tends to stick around for a while. It is one where it gets into the data center. You've put in a router and a switch, and you've brought in a wide area network connection, and you've plugged in gigabit connections. That's going to be there a very long time. Ethernet has been around for a very, very long time. Gig Ethernet, been around for 10, 15, 20 years, maybe. Approaching that, at least 15. So you plug in your gig system, and now it runs. The brand new system I got's got 10 gig in it. I can't even plug it into 10 gig. I don't have a 10 gig system here. It's running at a tenth of its capabilities. Now I have to upgrade. That's the benefit. But networking, it's a slow go. But if you look at operating systems, 3 years ago, Windows 10 was out for a year. And now Windows 10 is sort of old. Windows 7 we don't even think about anymore. Windows Vista is barely on the map. But that was really what was going on 3 years ago. So in 3 years, a dramatic difference in operating systems. Also a dramatic difference in hardware and what we're doing with the hardware. Who would have thought cryptocurrency would now suddenly be taking all of our video cards away? We can't even buy a video card anymore because of that. Those are the things today that are pushing the hardware. But in networking, not such a big difference. I often tell people, don't worry so much about the newest exam. You got 6 months to take the N10006. But you could almost study from either one of those and still pass. I don't recommend that. I always recommend studying from materials that match the version of the exam you're planning to take. So if you're planning to take the N10006, only study from N10006 materials. If you're planning to take the N10007, only study from materials that are for the 007. Don't mix and match. You will do yourself a disservice. And it's different depending on the exams you take. If you look at the Security Plus, which was updated at the end of the year, last year, Security Plus between the previous version and the current version, dramatic difference. Almost 50% difference, I would think. So that's one where you really don't want to mix your study materials. So pick one. For networking, pick whichever one you'd like. The N10006 is going to be retired at the end of August. So keep that in mind. If you're somebody who takes a long time to study, I'm one of those people. It takes me a year to kind of study and be ready for a certification. I probably wouldn't plan on taking the N10006. I'd probably jump over to the N10007. So that may be the best thing to think about strategy-wise. But you'll find that the content in those two exams, in that particular situation, very similar. You're not going to see much difference between those. So if you're ever wondering, always get both exam objectives. The exam objectives list everything. That's the first thing I do when a new exam comes out is I pull up the exam objectives, I put them side by side, and I start making notes. I have one set of exam objectives that is everything that is gone. I have another set of the exact same exam objectives where I highlight the things that are new. And then I also put between them the things that are the same. So I'm able to mix and match and really see the differences between those. It's a really good exercise, though, for you to do individually. I don't tend to publish that because I think that's something you should do. Go through the list, see which one fits for you, and then choose that one and go with it. One of the challenges you have right now when these new exams come out, the exam study materials are kind of slow to emerge. It takes a long time to build a video course. It takes even a little bit longer to build a book. So you'll find that the exam will be released, and then it's a couple of months before you really start to see a good choice of study materials on the market. So keep that in mind too. If you're planning to take the 007 right now, there may not be exactly what you're expecting out there as far as book selection. You might have a book. I've got 2 videos that are done and published for 007. I shot about 9 videos yesterday, and I still have more in the can that have to be edited before that. So I've got more than a tenth of my video series is already shot. I just have to edit and get it online. So that's one of the things that you may want to think about too. There might not be a lot of stuff out there yet. so it may be worthwhile. Doesn't matter which one you take and pass, you get the same certification. So you'll never probably take the certification exam again. You'll just keep renewing it and keeping that exam up to date. And the renewal of most of these exams, people are not taking the exam again. They're either gathering continuing education units. The folks over at CompTIA have now made these one-shot study material things online, these Cert Masters that you can go through. And if you go through the entire Cert Master, you're renewed. That's it. So you do one thing and you've renewed. So easy now to stay up to date. So that's the way they do it. You have to go through it, and you have to pass, and you have to click the right answers in there, but it's relatively easy to do. It's not sitting for an exam and relatively inexpensive. So there's no good reason now to let an exam let a certification lapse. Should never let the certification expire. I should always keep them going. Now I could see 20 years from now, should you keep your A+ around when you're the director or the CIO of some organization? Okay, maybe not. Maybe the A+ is not really for you. But at that point, it will be self-apparent, hopefully, to be able to do something like that. Well, we've come to the end of another hour. I can't believe it. You stuck with me. Congratulations for that. They said it couldn't be done, but you did it. I want to thank everybody for being here. Thanks for being here for the first hour in our Q&A. Thanks for being here in the second hour for the talking on the phone and all of the craziness that tends to happen in the second hour. We really couldn't do this without you, and I really do appreciate you hanging in there. Good luck to everybody on your exams. Don't forget about watching for our study group next week. Our Network Plus study group is a week from today at 12 noon Eastern Time. Hope to see you there. If not, we will see you next time on the A+ study group. Thanks, everyone.